Welcome to part 2 of this video series. In part 1, I created this absolutely beautiful section that will accept a Parker refill. And in part 2, we're going to create a body for that section out of this blank. Initially, I thought I would take this blank and just cut it in half. I'd use one half for the cap and one half for the body, and then I would try to match them back up. And I got to thinking, I'm going to lose 5/8 of an inch down here for threads. And, once you cut it, you're going to lose the kerf of your blade. So bottom line, it's never really going to match perfectly. And the cool thing about the blank is it's such a random pattern that I really don't think it's going to matter. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm just going to chuck the entire blank up in my collet chuck. I'm going to go ahead and prepare the body with the shoulder and the threads. We'll get it drilled out. We'll get the proper depth for the Parker refill. And once we know all of that, we can measure back, and then we'll just part off only what we need for the body, so there'll be no waste. Whatever's left, we can use for the cap. I think this is going to be a better way to make this pin in this particular instance, because I'm dealing with a standard size pin blank as opposed to a longer rod that I would use on a normal Bespoke pin. I'm going to start this project by truing up the end of the blank to make sure it's perfectly square. And then I'm going to cut a 13mm tenon 5/16 of an inch deep on this blank. 5/16 of an inch equates to about 7.9 millimeters. And I'm going to use this paper here to my advantage. I'll place my calipers against the end of the blank and just draw a little line right there. Now we'll set our pencil on that line. And we're ready to start cutting our tenon. I've got my threads cut on my tenon. They are M13.8 threads, ready to test with a cap. And look at that. Got a nice tight fit. Everything is true. The next step on the body of my pin will be to drill a hole and tap it with M10-1 threads to accept the threads on the back end of our section. I did not talk a whole lot about the depth that I was going to drill into this blank with that S-bit. But let me show you something. I'm going to use this Tommy bar, and I'll stick it into the body of the pin, and I'll mark it with my finger. Now, I need for my tap, the back part of the tap, you can see this is tapered. I'm not using a plug tap. It's going to go down. If it touches my finger, you can see that there is a slight shoulder from here forward. Let me bring my section over and lay my section against the front of the Tommy bar. That is roughly where the threads on the section end. So what that means is if my tap goes this far into the blank before bottoming out, the back of the tap is going to go the entire distance of the threads, or the entire distance of the shoulder where the threads need to be, so that my threads are cut to the proper depth all the way down the inside of this blank. Now what we want to do is we're going to take an M10-1 tap, and we're going to tap the inside of this blank. I'm getting ready to cut those threads, and if you take a look at the end of this blank, I know you can't really see it in the video, but it's relatively thin. There's not a whole lot of meat between the inside and the outside of this shoulder. So I'm going to use this little block that I made a while back, and I did a video on it, and I'm just going to thread it onto my shoulder. And now that's going to give me some added support as I tap the threads down the center of this blank. I've got my threads tapped inside of the blank. I've brought my section over, and we're going to go ahead and test fit it. Look at that. That is super nice. All the way around, we've got a nice tight fit. Absolutely gorgeous. Next up, what we need to do is get our ink refill and measure for the proper distance that we need to drill in so that we can accept the ink refill inside the body of the pen. Let's take a quick measurement of the ink refill inside the section, and you can see we're bottoming out right there. If I bring my calipers over, the section will butt right up against this shoulder, and you can see that it looks like I need to drill in about 23.28 millimeters. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and drill about 20 millimeters into the blank with a 15/64 inch bit, and then we'll stop, and very slowly we'll sneak up on the perfect distance, because what we want is we want a tight fit with the ink refill. We don't want the ink to be moving back and forth inside of the pen. I've chucked up my 15/64 inch bit, and I've seated it against the back of the hole that I drilled into the body of my pin. I reset my calipers for roughly 20 millimeters, and I'm going to go ahead now and make a mark right here. We're going to drill to that mark, and then we're going to stop and test. I've finished drilling to the proper depth. We're about 20 millimeters in. We're going to remove our drill bit, and we're going to take our section with the ink refill, and we're going to test. Right about there, we're getting tight. So you can see we've got maybe a little over 1/4 of an inch, between 1/4 and 3/8 of an inch. So I'm going to bring the bit back up, and we're just going to ever so slightly go in a tiny bit at a time and continue to test. It took me 3 additional times at drilling and testing before I hit the perfect depth for my refill. I have no play in the refill. I'm super excited about that. But let me tell you guys a little secret. Let's say that you're doing this and you're trying to sneak up on the proper depth and you accidentally drill in just a little too far to where maybe your ink refill is just, it's got a little bit of play in it. If that's the case, take a hard flat surface. In my case, I would use probably my parting tool, put some sandpaper on it, and just hold it against this tenon. Just a little bit, sand a little off, and then test. A little off and test, because you're going to shorten this, which is going to push that refill out of the end of the section, and it's going to tighten it up for you. So that's a little trick for tightening up these refills if you get a little too crazy with the drill bit. I need to know just how deeply I drilled into this blank with that 15/64" drill bit. So what I'm going to do is I brought my calipers over, I've set them to millimeters and zeroed them out. I'm going to flip them around, and as you flip your calipers around, you've got this little slide that comes out the back. I'm going to send that right down the center of the pin, and I'm going to let it bottom out, and then I'm going to lock my calipers, and I can see that 56.55 millimeters is the depth of the hole in my pin. So we need to make sure when we part this body of the pin off that we are greater than 56.55 millimeters. Otherwise, we're going to have a straw. I removed my blank from the collet chuck, and there's my mark. Here's the cap off of another Bespoke pin I did a while back. And if you lay that against this blank, you can see that I've got maybe 1/2 inch from the end of this cap to my line. That's good because I've already tested this cap and it fits perfectly on the end of my pin. When I lay it against my pin, you can see that there probably is a good 1/4 inch to 3/8 inch from the tip of the nib to the end of the cap. So I'm going to have plenty of material, if I don't make any silly mistakes, to be able to make a cap for this pin. I chose a cap distance of 58 millimeters. And I did that because if I measure from the shoulder of my blank out past my nib, that's going to give me plenty of room on the end of the cap so that I don't have to worry about it being too thin. I can come back here and measure out 58 millimeters, and you can see I still have maybe just shy of 1/2 inch of material on the back side of my blank. So what we're going to do is we're going to get our cap cut from the blank, and then we can take this blank, put it back on the lathe, and shape it to the desired shape. I now have 2 lines on my blank. This first line is the point at where the ink refill ends inside the body of my pen. The second line is the 58 millimeter mark from the other end of the blank going this way. So I'm going to bring my parting tool in, and I'm going to part to the outside of this second line, and I'm going to part the body off from the cap. Now that I have the body of my blank separated from the cap, I'm going to go ahead and just face the cap off so it's got a nice flat surface. Then I'll remove it from the collet chuck. I've already installed my mandrel in my pin body, so I'll get that into my collet chuck, and then we're going to shape the body of our pin. I gave the body of my pin a little shape, and I just got done micro meshing it. I think it looks amazing. I'm going to go ahead and run it across the buffing wheels, and then I'll put the section in, and we'll see what the body and section look like together. I wanted to show you guys my pin. It's really turning out nice. I couldn't be happier with it. I absolutely love this long section because now when I grip the pen, I've got a nice large area to grip, but it's also the right length to where as I write, it's super comfortable in your hand. I think it's turning out fantastic. I'd like to thank you for joining me in the shop tonight, and I really hope you're enjoying these pin turning videos. I am having an incredible time. This is just so much fun for me because it's all learning. I'm spending all my time learning and practicing, and just, this is amazing. And I'm so excited. I mean, look at the body of that pin. I love the shape. I love how it shines. I like these flat ends on the back. I love this nib that I'm coming up with. As I keep working this nib over and over, I've got this huge area here to grip, which is super comfortable. I've got a nice long cone section. When you write with this, it's extremely comfortable to write with. I think I'm finally hitting on something for the nib, so I'm really happy about that. I've got enough of this blank left, if I don't have any issues, to turn a really nice cap for this pen. Hopefully tomorrow night there'll be an opportunity for me to get out here in the shop and do that. That will be the next project that I do. So if it's not tomorrow, it'll be the next time I come out to turn. And I really hope you guys stick around for that video. I want you to know that you are always welcome in my shop. Come back and see me again real soon, and we'll keep learning together.